Come and join iLearn IAS and feel the difference.
Hi all, welcome to today's session on Indian polity. Today we are going to discuss about part 1 of Indian Constitution. Part 1 of Indian Constitution consists of article 1 to 4. Okay, let's see part 1 of Indian Constitution. It consists of article 1 to article 4. So what does article 1 talks about? Okay, article 1 gives an idea about what is the name of our country. What is the name of our country? And it also gives an idea about the type of the polity that we are going to have. Okay, so we are going to get two primary information from article 1. Article 1 gives a clear idea about what is going to be the name of the country of this particular constitution, and it also gives an idea about what type of the polity or a political system that we are going to have. Let's read article 1 and try to understand whether we are getting this information from it. Article 1 states that India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. The states and the territories thereof shall be specified in the first schedule. The territory of India shall comprises the territory of the states, the union territory specified in the first schedule, and such other territories as may be acquired. So it starts with the word India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. Why we have used these two words? India and Bharat. See, in the Constitution Assembly debates or during the Constitution Assembly debates, we can clearly observe that it was very difficult to find a consensus between what is going to be the name of the country. Some of the members of the Constitution Assembly argued that we should adopt the traditional name, that is Bharat. At the same time, some of other leaders argued that we should go by the name the world knows us, that is India. Finally, since it was very difficult to actually find a consensus among these two names, it was decided to adopt both the names. So therefore, we adopted both the names, and the very first part of Article 1 says that India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. So therefore, we adopted both the names for our country. We adopted the traditional name Bharat as well as the modern name India. So from Article 1, we get an idea about what is going to be the name of the country. That is India, that is Bharat. So that is very clear. Now let's look at the second one. It also gives an idea about the type of the polity. Okay, what do you mean by polity? Polity means the political system that we are going to have. So India is going to be a federal country. But instead of identifying ourselves as a federation, it says that in the first article, it says that India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. So you should clearly understand what is meant by union of states. Okay? See, we never identified ourselves as a federation of the state. We never identified ourselves as federation of states. Okay. No. Why? Because Ambedkar himself was identified in the Constitution Assembly that instead of identifying ourselves as a federation of a state, we identify ourselves as a union of state because, first reason, India is not an example where the states has actually come together, come into an agreement and resulted in a federation. If you look at the origin of USA or the United States of America, you can see that 13 colonies at that particular time decided to come together and act as a single entity rather than individually interacting with the Britain. And therefore, these 13 independent colonies at that particular time decided to come together and comes into an agreement and finally resulted in the formation of United States of America. So United States of America or USA is a typical example of a federation. But when we look at the origin of our country, India is not as an outcome of agreement between independent entities. Rather, India is more of a holding together model. So instead of identifying India as a coming together model or a whole, so if you look at the federal countries across the world, we can actually classify these federal countries. We can classify the federal countries into two. One is holding together model and the other is coming together model. Coming together and holding together. So USA is a typical example of a coming together model. So what do you mean by coming together model? See, in coming together model, independent colonies or countries or a group of states decided to come together and identify itself as one single country for political benefits or for economic benefits or for security reasons. It is better to identify as a single entity rather than independent entities. So that is an example, or that is how coming together models are actually formed. So USA is an example of a coming together model. USA is an outcome of an agreement between independent colonies at that time. But that is not how India is originated. If you look at the origin of India, we can see that India is more of a holding together model. So therefore, it was decided to not to identify itself as a federation. So we decided not to go for federation of states. In order to identify the peculiar system of political system of our country, we decided to identify ourselves as a union of states. So rather than a federation, we are a union of states. That means the states will never have the rights to secede away from this union. So Ambedkar clearly says in the Constitutional Assembly that India is not a federation of state, but rather a union of state because of two reasons. First one, India is not a country which is formed on the basis of an agreement between independent entities, as in the case of US. Second reason is that India is not actually in India. The states doesn't has the right to secede away from the union. So the first article very clearly states that the name of the country is going to be India, that is Bharat, and the type of the polity is going to be a union of states. That means rather than a federation, ours is going to be a union of states. If you look at federal countries across the world, you will see that the federal countries are always in a tight mold of federalism. A federal country is always in that federal system itself. Indian constitution, despite being a federal constitution, has strong unitary features. See, this is a model that has been designed by the constitution or the members of the Constitutional Assembly. In India, the members of the Constitutional Assembly didn't want to simply formulate a country in the same nature as the case of US. We never wanted to be a federation as the case of US. Our situations are much different from that in the case of US. So therefore, we identify ourselves as a union of state rather than federation of state. So is it clear? The very first point of Article 1 is that India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of state. I believe it's clear to you. So you got the idea that the name of the country, we have adopted both the names, and the same time you also got the type of the polity. We are not going to be a federation as in the case of US, but rather we are going to be a union. So this is the type or the model that we want to have. We want to have a country where federating entities are there. At the same time, we have a very strong central government also. So we are not a unitary government. We are not a completely federal system also. So we identify ourselves as a union of states. So that gives an idea about the type of the polity that we are going to have. At the same time, Article 1 also talks about the territory of our country. See, the states and the territories are actually identified in the first schedule of the Constitution. In the Constitution, along with the articles, there are a series of tables and lists given. These lists and tables are normally identified as the schedules. In the very first schedule of the Constitution, you get the name of the states as well as the territories of our country. Then, the third point in Article 1 is that it talks about what constitutes India's territory. India's territory is identified as the territory of every state, union territories, which is given in the first schedule, and any other such territories as India has acquired. So basically, the territory of the country consists of the territories of the state, the union territories, and such other territories as may be acquired. So let's consolidate all this information about Article 1. So Article 1, first point, the name of the country, India or Bharat. We have adopted both the names, right? Okay. The second point is with respect to the type of the polity. type of polity. And we have identified ourselves as a union of state instead of federation. Okay. And the third is we have identified the territory of India. The territory of India consists of the territory of the states, the union territories, which comes directly under the central government, and any other territories as may be acquired. So this is what the information that you are getting from Article 1. Is it clear? Any doubt? So basically it talks about the name, it talks about the type of the polity, and it also talks about the territory of our country. Okay, now let's move to Article 2 and Article 3. Now, part 1 of the Constitution, of Indian Constitution, is actually talking about the union and the territory. Clear? Now, what should be done to create a new state? If you are going to actually accept a new territory from outside and identify it as a new state, what needs to be done? At the same time, if you are going to go for some internal readjustment and to create a new state, for example, Andhra Pradesh is divided into two, and right now we have Andhra Pradesh as well as Telangana. So such internal readjustments. So what are the provisions for this? See, the provisions for adopting new states or making changes to the existing states is provided in Article 2 and Article 3 of the Constitution. So let's try to understand about Article 2 and Article 3. So let's read Article 2. Parliament may by law admit into the Union or establish new states on such terms and conditions as it thinks fit. So the Constitution has actually given the power to Parliament to make a law with respect to accepting new states into Indian Union. So the power lies with whom? So Article 2 talks about accepting new states into Indian Union. Okay. And the power for doing this lies with whom? Lies with Parliament. So Parliament can actually make a law and accept new states into Indian Union. Now, there is no need to consult the existing states with respect to accepting new states. That power lies alone with whom? Alone with the central legislative entity, that is the Parliament. So that is what Article 2 is talking about. Now, let's see what is Article 3 talking about. So Article 3 is basically going to talk about how we can actually conduct internal readjustments with respect to the existing states and union territory, and what are the provisions for that. So let's read Article 3. Formation of new states and alteration of areas, boundaries, or names of existing states. So here also it starts with Parliament may by law form a new states by separation of territory from any state, or by uniting two or more states or part of states, or by uniting any territory to part of any state. Next one, increase the area of any state, diminish the area of any state, alter the boundaries of any state, alter the name of any state, provided that no bill for the purpose shall be introduced in either house of the Parliament except on the recommendation of the President, and unless where the proposal contained in the bill affects the area, boundaries, or name of any of the states, the bill has been referred by the President to the legislature of that state for expressing its views thereon, within such period as may be specified in the reference, or within such further period as the President may allow, and the periods of specified allowed had expired. So it's a very big article. Let's try to actually make this article more understandable to us. What does Article 3 talks about? Article 3 is actually talking about creating new states. So basically Article 3 is talking about creating new state and making changes within existing state. Okay, so creating new states. How are we going to create new states? We are going to create new states by making internal readjustments. For example, let's say we are actually taking a territory from a particular state and naming it as a new state. Or we are taking certain territory from one particular state and some other territory from some other particular state and forming it as a new state. Or we are taking territory from one particular state and adding it with another state. For example, let's say we are dividing Kerala into two. Okay. So let's see, we have one Kerala in the north and one Kerala in the south. Okay. North Kerala and South Kerala. Okay. And this can actually be done by whom? It can be done by the parliament. And for that, the parliament just needs to make a law. So such internal readjustments, so and thereby creating new states. In addition to that, it also talks about what? It also talks about increasing the area of any state or diminishing the area or reducing the area of any particular state. Or we can change the boundary of any state. We can change the name of any state. See, let's say, so my name is Shinas. Let's say we are going to change the name of Kerala into Shinas land. Is it possible? Yeah, it's very well possible. What needs to be done for that? We need to make a law. Who need to make a law? The parliament needs to make a law with that particular effect. Now, there lies a fundamental doubt for every student. Can the central government or can the parliament simply make a law and change the name of a state? It can be done. So there is no role by the state? Yes. There is a small precaution. What is the precaution? If you want to make a such change to the name of a state, you need to get the permission of the president first for introducing such a bill. So any bill introducing in the parliament for changing the name of the state or changing the boundary of a state or creating new state by altering the internal boundaries of the state, etc., has to get the permission of the president. And what the president shall do? The president will make sure that such legislation is actually sent to the corresponding state. So, for example, if you are going to change the name of Kerala into Shinas land, such a bill needs to be introduced into the parliament. Before introducing in the parliament, it should get the permission of the president. And what the president shall do? The president shall send this particular bill to the consideration of the Kerala state legislature. But whatever is going to be the opinion of the Kerala state legislature with respect to this particular bill, which is changing the name of the Kerala, the president can give permission or not give permission. It is his decision. He is not bound by the decision taken by the state legislature. He is just getting the information from the state legislature or getting the opinion of the state legislature. He is not bound by that. He may or may not give permission. Let's say that he gives the permission for presenting the bill. Then the bill will be presented in the parliament, and when both the house of the parliament passes the bill and comes before the president for the assent, and finally the president gives his assent, then the name of that particular state is changed. So you can actually change the name of the state, for example Kerala, into Shinas land by passing a bill in the parliament. You only need to make sure that you get the permission of the president for presenting such a bill. Okay. Now, this is something very interesting to know. Why? It means that the parliament can simply alter the existence or change the name, boundaries, etc. of a state. In other words, the territorial existence of every state in India is dependent upon the parliament. The parliament can make or change the states as and when it requires. Only thing is that such a legislation or such a bill needs the permission of the president for introducing in the house. So this gives a clear idea that Article 2 and Article 3 gives a clear idea that in India, the states can be destructed at any time. See, Article 2 talks about introducing a new states to Indian Union. You are not asking the permission of the states or getting the opinion of the state. See, can we add a new state to Indian Union? Are we asking the existing states? No, we are not doing that. We are adding a new state into Indian Union as and by or in the way in which the parliament wants to. So that power lies with the parliament, and that is what is described in Article 2. And what does Article 3 talks about? Article 3 very specifically says that you can change the name of the of a state, change the boundary of a state, change the area of a state, or you can make internal readjustments and create a new state. All these can be done by the parliament. The only precaution is that such a bill needs the permission of the president, and the president, before giving permission, will get the opinion of the concerned state legislatures. So if you're going to change the name of a particular state, a bill for the same need to be introduced in the house. Okay, and you need to get the president's permission. The opinion of the state legislature doesn't have much role to play here. In other words, the mere existence of the states in our country is dependent upon the parliament. So therefore, you need to understand that it is always identified, or if you look at the type of the polity in India, there's a very famous statement. It says that India is an indestructible union of destructible states. So what does it say? India is an indestructible union of destructible states. That means, in the very first article, we have clearly told that India is a union of states. That means the states doesn't have the right to secede away from the union. Correct? So, if the states have no right to secede away from the union can never be destructed. Okay. And at the same time, the state's identity is always dependent upon the parliament. The parliament at any time, by legislation, can change the very identity of the state itself. So therefore, we say that it is an indestructible union of destructible states. Do you get the idea? India is always identified as an indestructible union of destructible states. Now, Article 4 of the Constitution, which is the last article of this part, Article 4. So what does Article 4 talks about? So let's read Article 4. The laws made under Article 2 and Article 3 to provide for the amendment of the first and the fourth schedule and supplemental, incidental and constitutional matters. So basically, we will read Article 4. I will give a small hint what it is about. You are going to change the name of a particular state by Article 3, or by Article 2, you are adding a new state. So while you are adding a new state or making change to the existing states list, etc., you need to bring changes to the very first schedule of the Constitution. See, I told you that the first schedule of the Constitution contains a list of the states and contains a list of the union territories. Correct? So if you are adding a new state, you need to add it here. If you are going to make a change to the existing states, you need to bring that change here. So in that sense, while you are actually making changes to the existing states, you need to make corresponding changes in the Constitution. Now there lies a question. How do we make this change in the Constitution? Do we need to pass a constitutional amendment for that? Or can it be done in some other way? So Article 4 clearly says that how we can actually make changes to the Constitution while we are adding a new state, while we are altering the boundary of a state, while we are altering the name of a state, etc. So let's see what does it talks about. Any law referred to in Article 2 or Article 3 shall contain such provisions for the amendment of first schedule, which gives the list, okay, and the fourth schedule, as may be necessary to give effect to the provisions of the law, and may also contain such supplemental, incidental, and constitutional provisions, including provisions as to representation in Parliament and in the legislature or the legislatures of the state affected by such law, as Parliament may deem necessary. No such law aforesaid shall be deemed to be an amendment of this Constitution for the purpose of Article 368. So, the fourth article very clearly says that any changes that you are actually going to make to the existing list of the state or the boundaries of the state or any such additions, simultaneously you need to make changes in the Constitution, right? You need to make changes in Schedule 1 of the Constitution, which is giving the list of the states or the list of the union territories. Also, you may need to make changes to Schedule 4. What does Schedule 4 consist of? Schedule 4 is the list of every state and the corresponding seats in Rajya Sabha. So let's say that you are actually going to change the name of a state, then corresponding change has to be there in Schedule 4. For example, if you are bifurcating Andhra Pradesh into Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, then we need to add Telangana as a new state in Schedule 1, right? Similarly, we need to add Telangana in Schedule 4 also and identify the number of seats in Rajya Sabha for Telangana. So such changes to the constitutions shall be made, and it can be done by simple majority. That means it need not be considered as a special majority by amending the constitution. It can be done by simple majority. Now, you got the idea, and you got the implication of what it means. So it actually means that you can simply change the name of a state or the boundary of a state or alter the very existence of a state, and it can be done by simple majority. There is no need for constitutional amendment for doing that. So the existence of the territorial existence of every state in our country is dependent upon what? Is dependent upon the parliament. When compared the same with US, you will see that US is also an example of an indestructible union, because there also the states doesn't have the freedom to move out of the union. But the existence of the state can never be changed. So US is always identified as an indestructible union of indestructible state, whereas India is identified as an indestructible union of destructible states. So let's try to consolidate all the informations that we got till now. Okay, we are studying about part 1 of the Constitution, where we are looking into Article 1, Article 2, Article 3 and Article 4. And Article 1, we got the idea that the name of the country is both India and Bharat. India, that is Bharat. And we also know that the type of the polity is going to be a union of state rather than a federation of the state. Okay, it also talks about that the list of the name of the states and the union territories is given in the Schedule 1 of the Constitution. Similarly, it also talks about the fact that the territory of India consists of the territories of the state, the union territories, as well as the territories that we are occupying. Okay, then we are moving to Article 2. So what does Article 2 talks about? So Article 2 talks about how we can actually add a new states to Indian Union. How can we do that? We can do it by passing a law in the parliament. So a parliament by law can actually add a new states into Indian Union. Do we need to ask the existing states? There is no need for that. Parliament can simply do that. And what does Article 3 talks about? Article 3 talks about giving changes to the existing states. How can we do that? This can also be done by passing a law in the parliament. So what is the precaution regarding that? Such a law requires President's permission for presenting in the House. And what the President shall do is that President shall send this particular legislation to the corresponding state legislature. So we are going to make, or let's say, we are going to actually take some territory from Kerala and some territory from Tamil Nadu, and we are going to create a new state. Okay, and so this particular change is going to affect the state Kerala as well as the state of Tamil Nadu. So therefore, the President will send the corresponding bill to the legislature of both Kerala as well as Tamil Nadu, and the President will get their opinion. But the opinion of the state legislature is not binding on the President, and President may or may not give his permission. On that basis, once the bill is presented in the House, and if it is passed by both houses, then, and the President gives assent, then it will become an act. Corresponding change will also happen. And both these changes, Article 2 as well as Article 3, the laws made by the Parliament, can be passed by simple majority. There is no need for special majority or to consider it as a constitutional amendment. While we are adding a new state or making changes to the existing states, corresponding changes need to be brought to Schedule 1 as well as Schedule 4 and other parts of the Constitution. It can be done by simple majority. Such changes need not be identified as a constitutional amendment. So, this also gives, or part 1 of the Constitution clearly says that who has upper hand with respect to our political system, whether it's the union or the states. By following the idea that India is an indestructible union of destructible states, it is very clear, it is very evident that the union or the central government has an upper hand with respect to the state. And you also need to understand that Indian federal system is made in such a way that the constitution, despite being a federal constitution, has very strong unitary characters. We have actually made this constitution in such a way to meet the requirements of our country. So Article 1 to 4 gives a clear idea about who has an upper hand when it comes to the union and the territory. That is always the central or the central legislation has that special powers. So is it clear to all of you? Article 1 to 4? Okay, so basically Article 1 to 4, like we can expect some mains questions from this particular topic. See, for example, the question can be like Article 2 and 3 of Indian Constitution is antithetical to the federal system of our country. So you can clearly identify that why we have actually created such a law, because we are not simply following a system that is already in existence in US and all. We don't want a federal system as the case of US. We want a system that meets the requirements of our country, that is India. And that is how we have actually created a part 1 of the Constitution and specifically identified and given power to the Parliament with respect to introducing new states or making changes to the existing states. And I believe it's very clear to all of you. So let's see in the further classes of Indian polity. Thank you.